Hey there, guys. So, my top exercises and why. Keeping it to a pretty short list. There's enough noise out there when it comes to the fitness community and what you should and shouldn't do. So, yeah, just going to keep it really simple. Just 5 exercises and my reasons why. So, the first one on the list is bench press. Simply why? It's generally the heaviest movement you can do for an upper body exercise. So, it's going to thoroughly work your chest, shoulders, triceps, to a lesser extent, even your forearms, depending on how you bench press and, if you're gripping the bar tight. It's not something to be downplayed, especially when the weight gets heavy, and or if you're going with a quick bench or anything like that where you're really going to overload the movement. You simply have to be able to support the weight. So bench press for me is a really good exercise, and just hits, as I said, the shoulder, chest and triceps thoroughly. If you're doing more like a powerlifting movement, obviously compete in powerlifting, when you retract your scapula and set yourself up properly, you're going to find there's a substantial amount of upper back involved as well, just because you're trying to stay tight under load and put yourself in the most advantageous position you basically can. So look, from a upper body development point of view, bench press I find works really well. And that being said, there's different variations of the bench press. If you take a really wide grip, you're going to hit more chest. If you take a really narrow grip, it's going to be more shoulders and triceps. Take a pretty even grip, it's a mix of shoulder, chest and tri. But long term, ultimately, I've found taking a wide grip is better for chest development. And if you wanted to count push-ups in the same category as bench press in terms of a pressing movement, you can, and to a lesser extent, you'd put in incline or decline bench as well. Then moving to just a purely shoulder movement, and even to an extent triceps again, is the one arm overhead press. If you wanted to do a barbell overhead press, you could as well, but personally I prefer the one arm variation, and the reason is I get to work each side and I get to see where my weaknesses are. Also, being able to use one arm at a time, you're going to get a lot more core development. This hits my obliques really well, also hits the core, and that has carryover into other lifts. Now, depending on how you do the dumbbell one arm press, I have a slight twist in the wrist. The dumbbell's not perfectly to the side of my body, and that just means I don't get any impingement of the shoulder. The dumbbell is free to move in a way that feels comfortable and non-restrictive. Where the dumbbell comes down, if that was a bar, then the bar obviously would collide, onto my skull, which obviously isn't going to work very well. So I find being able to do the one arm press, not only do I hit the anterior delts thoroughly, but I can also work a fair bit of the medial and rear delts at the same time. So I basically get the whole of my shoulder worked thoroughly from just one exercise. You can play around with the reps. If you chase the really high rep ranges, you're going to get more of a burn in the shoulder and the triceps. You go heavier, you're going to find that your upper back really has to work really hard from a stability point of view, and so does your core. So it's not just limited to shoulders and triceps in that regard. It really does come down to being a full body movement. Your legs aren't going to play a main role, you're just there stabilizing. But in terms of like upper body development, shoulders and triceps obviously get hit hard, and secondary to that is your upper and mid back, and then your core as well. So just a really good quality movement. I also find bench pressing heavy once a week and then doing this later on heavy once a week, that's the optimal amount for me personally of pressing that I need. I've still hit my triceps thoroughly twice in a week that way, and shoulders have been hit once heavy on the bench press, and then if I want to chase higher reps, I can do it on the overhead press without aggravating the shoulder. And I'm not pressing in the same I'm not going to say same range of motion, but I'm just not in the same movement pattern. It's a little bit different. So that's my reasoning behind it. For lower body development, it's really hard to go past squats. Now, this is a traditional powerlifting squat, bar on the back and hip depth. Now, for other individuals, when I say squat, you don't have to just limit it to a back squat. You guys might throw in front squats, but I think having the squat movement itself as an exercise is going to be really beneficial. And you can mix it up. One day you could go heavy with the traditional squat. The other day you could go, more moderate or chase higher rep ranges with the front squat. Mixing the two in is, ideal. Front squat just teaches you how to really drop your hips down and stay in position while keeping your chest up, versus heavy low bar squats, a bit more posterior chain dominant, but you can grind out a heavier weight. Now, sometimes it's going to impact your lower back. It really comes down to the individual. If you can mix it up well and learn to keep your chest up, you won't find it as taxing. So, squats, not only do they just work the legs, but, when the load gets heavy enough, the whole of your back just has to work isometrically to help hold you in position. If it didn't, you'd just crumple forward under load. So there's a lot going on with the squat as a whole, and that's why a lot of people call them a full body exercise. Back, for me, one of my big ones is the pull-ups. So some people prefer rows. I personally prefer pull-ups because I can really feel my lats working. I also find after heavy squats and other things like that, it's nice to have a movement where I'm not loading the lower or mid back again. It's a little bit of decompression work at the same time. I get a good stretch in my lats and I can really feel my upper back work thoroughly. If you can't do pull-ups, then, you might opt for lat pull down is another really good substitute. Or you could use the assistant chin-up machine, whatever you need in order to get that same sort of movement pattern. With dumbbell rows, you're rowing the weight to your chest. It's just a different movement, and I already sort of get enough load running through my mid and lower back from like an axial loading point of view, so I'm trying to avoid that where possible, and I just find pull-ups work really well in that regard. If I'm going to hit my upper back, loading it up like I'm doing here with Shrugs, that's a different story, because to work upper back itself and really shrug the weight up, you're just limited to Shrugs. And a big upper back and traps just sort of finishes off the total physique. Arms, forearms, forearms definitely get worked thoroughly when you're doing heavy Shrugs, especially if you're not using any straps, because you're forced to really grip onto it. And then again, going back to the pull-ups, it's going to hit your biceps as well. So at the end of the day, you've hit your forearms, your biceps, your triceps. You've worked your upper body thoroughly from an anterior point of view with the bench press, and from a posterior point of view, with the pull-ups as well as the squats. So you've pretty much hit everything, and it's not a complicated training style. And I just did that, with 5 different exercises. So that's just my take on my exercises and why I value them. If you have questions, feel free to comment below. Hit like and subscribe, and have a great day wherever you are.